You are listening to the 5 a.m. podcast, and today is your day. Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with thought leaders and influencers who are making headway and even some waves in their callings. Today, we are joined by a financial insider who's discovered a troubling pattern across multiple European economies, and I'm sure the same would hold true for the economies of North America. Well, Ivan Pavlovic, author of Making Money on the Money Printer, began questioning why living standards were declining for young professionals, even in the wealthiest countries of Europe. His journey from financial industry professional to economic investigator led him to uncover how monetary policies systematically erode wealth and distort markets worldwide. Through his research drawing on Austrian economics and practical financial wisdom, Ivan has developed a framework to help everyday people understand and navigate an increasingly complex economic landscape. His book strips away the economic jargon to reveal how inflation functions not as an economic accident, but as a design feature of our current system, and more importantly, how we can position ourselves to be protected and to grow our wealth despite these headwinds. Now, a warm welcome to you as you listen. Please consider sharing this with 3 of your friends. I know this is going to be an engaging and enjoyable conversation. And of course, a big thanks to those over at myinstantgold.com, where you can buy gold for as little as $10 at a time. And of course, we want to thank those who ventured over to buymeacoffee.com/5am podcast and bought us a few of those delicious virtual cups of coffee this week and last. We do appreciate your support. And now, Ivan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you here. And I got to say, this was a good book. I do like economic books, and I appreciate that you took the time to put all this information together. All that being said, we're eager to dive into the realities of what you point out in the book is actually a distorted financial system. Can you make the comment about economics is not like physics? Let's start there.
Yes, Michael, that's true. We live in an era where there are, I think, too many experts on everything.
Yes.
They want to, there are certain, of course, always groups that want to present everything as undisputable. So
Yes.
in the past, obviously, these things were more related to faith and religion. So we had this throughout ages, not just in medieval times, but of course even before that. And then if you didn't believe in something, if you didn't listen to the authority on something, you could be easily punished. And so I think this is the same today with economic matters.
Yes, so true. And this is going to, ladies and gentlemen, I should preface and just say this is going to be a great conversation. And we've been fortunate to have a few economists on the show, Jonathan Newman and Dr. Marie Sabrin. And now, of course, Ivan gets to put his name up on the wall in the 5 a.m. podcast Hall of Fame for talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is economics. Now, Ivan, you've lived across multiple European countries, from Croatia and Luxembourg to Portugal. What specific observations led you to realize that something was fundamentally broken in our economic system?
Well, Michael, I think it was just the standard of living, and it's not just me, I'm honored to be on your show and with all these other names that you mentioned. But as you know, I'm a self-educated guy. I'm by no means a professional economist, and so if somebody like me could just figure things out intuitively, I'm sure there are many more people who have done the same, and then I think that the challenge was just to understand what was really going on. It's like you feel that something is not right, but you cannot point the finger why it is.
Right.
And so I was raised in Croatia, in Zagreb, which is the capital for those who might not be aware. It's a small country, but very diverse country. And I moved to Luxembourg, which is one of the wealthiest, and definitely was one of the wealthiest when I was leaving Croatia 10 years ago. And after that, I also journeyed through Ireland and Portugal for some time. I'm now in Portugal have been for 2.5 years, and I spent a year in Dublin. And everywhere, it was the same thing everywhere. Putting blame on immigration, on sudden demand for housing, but you see that it's harder and harder to rent a house, rent a home, or even buy it. But you also see it with other things. People are not stupid. They see that the cost of their T-shirt has gone up. Of quality wardrobe, of cars, of this and that, and so this is contrary to what should be happening, right? Because if yesterday we had to shovel through something to dig a hole, and today we have different types of engines on the construction side, which make our jobs easier, that's supposed to bring prices down, not up. And so how is it that everything is going up in price? So that's
good. That's very good. And I think you talk in the book about the great Henry Hazlitt, who wrote, among other things, Economics in One Lesson, which is a book that I love. And I suppose we could get into even Frederick Bastiat's book, The Law, which is another great book. But there is a quote that I wanted to share from Henry Hazlitt that I think answers the question we've all been asking of, we cannot pay labor more than it produces. And I think that I'll get you to speak to this in a moment. And maybe in relation to your book, you mentioned that, like I was saying, the economics and physics are not the same because there's predictable outcomes from physics, unlike the economy that we have now. How does this reality that we're facing clash with how economics currently taught in universities today?
So, to what you said about that economics is not physics, again, we are constantly being bombarded by some experts on television or portals which tell us that it's normal that we have inflation, and then so this starts as a premise already, right? They are brought there. They say, yeah, there is inflation, and now they are being asked, okay, how do we treat inflation, right? So there is simply now this problem that popped out of nowhere, and now we have to deal with it. So and so nobody is even asking, okay, why is there inflation? Why are all the prices in the economy going up? And so this is how it's just, they're brought up, and now immediately there we are talking about everything that comes after. And usually the response is, so, well, now we have to do something about it. We need the government to step in and treat this sudden tragedy that is upon all of us and save us from what is happening to us. And so then different people have different views on what the government should or should not be doing, but basically all those mainstream theories, they basically say, well, there's this A, and if we do B, we will get a certain outcome, right? And of course 5 years later that outcome is not there, but they still keep the same talking points. They still go on and on and on with the same things. And, I'm just surprised that those same people, they don't understand, even after decades of what they've been saying, that they're clearly wrong, but they still keep repeating the same things.
While inflation erodes savings accounts and market volatility threatens traditional investments, families need a timeless solution that stands the test of time. Introducing MindstantGold.com, the revolutionary sound money wallet that makes gold ownership accessible to everyone. With MindstantGold.com, it is that Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution.
Yes,
it is like the people that pull the strings know that their policies are flawed and that they create inflation, and so then they just teach people through propaganda and other things that it's just a foregone conclusion that you're going to have inflation. And part of that goes back to, I think, what Henry Hazlitt was saying of we cannot pay labor more than what it produces. And so I know in my country of Canada, 25% of the population works for some level of government. So that's an enormous amount of the workforce. And so the reason that I bring that up is there is a lot of government employees who get paid more than what they produce. And I think that's part of the inflation. But can you talk to us about this little, almost like a little demon of inflation? How did we get it? And are there ways we could live where there is not inflation?
So, as you mentioned already, as you pointed out, we had great economist of the 20th century, Ludwig von Mises, who said that inflation is not some catastrophe of the elements or some plague or some unforeseen God-given event. It's a deliberate policy. And in that one line, he said everything about inflation. It's a deliberate policy. It's a state-created, manufactured issue. And so when we speak about productivity in general, yes, of course, we see this more and more in all countries. I'm well familiar with this. Croatians are well familiar with this because my parents grew up in Yugoslavia, which was a very communist, very socialist society. Yes. Today, we have Croatia as an independent, sovereign country who claims to be capitalist and probably is in name so, but to good extent it is really socialist because, as you said, you mentioned 25% of people work in Canada. I don't know how much it is in Croatia, for example, but I know that generally across the Western world, this percentage has been rising in the past decades in all the countries, or at least most of them, most of the developed countries. So the government has been creating more and more jobs, the governmental jobs, with their, regulations, taxation and everything. So they've been making it harder and harder for people in the private sector to create jobs and to save wealth that they could deploy in creating jobs by taxing people and regulating them, so that you need suddenly big wealth to even start a job just to create all those roles that would be dealing with all those regulations. And so what this also has done is that it protects basically the bigger companies from competition from smaller ones. So what we don't see, right? This is what you mentioned Bastiat earlier.
Yeah.
Bastiat wrote this excellent piece of what is seen and what is unseen. And governments usually like to measure and play with statistics or with what is seen, but they always leave out something that, of course, cannot even be measured, which is unseen. So
yes,
and I'll just finish with, so to connect this with the topic is as we have more and more governmental jobs, that means that the government now has to pay for all those jobs and all the benefits that it's given. And there are basically two ways that it can do so, right? One is the honest taxation. It says to the citizens, well, we will create all these great jobs so that you can do those governmental jobs, and we will pay you all these free benefits. Yes. But then we will also tax you guys, 10% more or 20% more. Yes. That's it. That's the honest way of doing it. And then people, of course, when they see that they're being taxed more, they don't like it. So then the politicians are being put into the spotlight with the taxes, and then even the journalists are not on their side. So then what they like to do on the other side is say, well, okay, we will not raise taxes. We will just, print. And there is a more sophisticated mechanism how they do it through the banking sector, but basically the devaluation of the debasement of currency, right, is basically the stealing of the purchasing power of the currency that they mandate to be used as a legal tender. That's the way they tax you, but in a more hidden and sophisticated way.
Yes. And it is very hidden and it is very sophisticated. And we don't think of inflation being this tax on us. And if I heard this quote many years ago, speaking of gold. And of course, the gold standard is a thing of the past, but at the time of Jesus Christ, an ounce of gold could buy two really good suits for a man. And still to this day, an ounce of gold would buy two really nice suits for a man. And so it's not, I don't know what the price of a toga or something would have been in Rome or Damascus at the time of Christ, but certainly, if you get two suits at $1,500 each or thereabouts, plus or minus, shoes, belts, ties, shirts, all that works into that two outfits for the ounce of gold. And the reason I bring that up is that it just becomes so much more labor required and so much more effort required to buy something now than not just 2,000 years ago, but 100 years ago. So I wanted to ask you.
In other words, we are getting poorer.
Yes, we are getting poorer because our money does not go as far as it used to. And certainly we can all look, you mentioned T-shirts and even rent and buying houses and the astronomical cost that everyone is facing. And it's not a North American problem only or a European problem. It's actually, it's actually a policy problem. And so let's talk a little bit about the central banks. They seem committed to maintaining, let's say, in doing us a favor, inflation targets around 2%. What's the stated justification for this policy, and what do you believe is the unstated purpose behind engineered inflation?
So I grew up by hearing everyone say real estate is a good investment.
Oh yes.
So I'm 34 now. So,
okay.
So the viewers can get an idea. And also, I was born in 1991 when Croatia became an independent state country. So it basically had no debt or low debt at the time, right? So, and I grew up by hearing that real estate always goes up, and that it's always a better investment than a car. Right? Like don't buy an expensive car. Don't be stupid. Be wise and buy real estate. It always goes up. And I would agree that it's better to buy real estate than a car if you can. But I would disagree that the real estate is supposed to always go up while the car doesn't. Because if you think about it, both of these things are made of materials that decay.
Yes.
And so to the real estate that is new today cannot be more valuable tomorrow unless there are maybe some other reasons, of course, of the location, etc. Right? Like maybe somebody finds oil in their ground, or there is a new Disney park open just next door, or things like that. But by speaking in the same circumstances, the house should not be more valuable tomorrow than it is today. And so I have not really heard yet of a great reason that central banks, and I'll just before that, I want to say that I also haven't been hearing much about central banks in general while living and just in general, like growing up or following news, etc. Nobody speaks about these entities, I think, too much. They mention them from time to time when they speak about interest rates, and then they say, "Oh, the central bank lowered or raised interest rate, or the central bank, did something with the currency when they are dealing with international exchanges." But you hear about these entities as if they are like some standard part of government or some standard part of society. Like nobody really, I think, understands them, what they are, how they got there. Maybe some economic students, obviously they study history a bit about them, but they don't go, I think, into too much details. And so they always would say, well, we want, their argument for inflation is that deflation has to be prevented. So it's not explained really why there is inflation, why we need it. It's more like deflation is bad because prices are going down, and then because prices are going down, people stop spending. There is no spending, and so there is then no investment, and so then there is no jobs. And then, because nobody is spending and prices are constantly falling down, and there are jobs, and we will then suddenly all be without jobs, or there will be just a big disaster, and nobody will know what to do if we don't put there a central bank who can basically debase currency.
Right.
And that's the idea, right? Which is,
Yes.
I mean, to whoever thinks about it even for a second, it's just play dumb, right?
Yes.
They don't understand, and these are these Keynesian economic theories that there are things that are called prices, and prices are a signal in the economy of demand and supply, right? That's all what prices are. And so when people are saying, oh, prices are too high, we need to do something to lower them, it's like you're saying, well, oh, you got a high temperature, right? It's showing 39. I'm speaking degrees Celsius, so for you it's different. So you have a high temperature. We need to do something about that barometer, the thermometer, to bring it down. But they don't say, well, you are sick. Something is wrong with your body. We need to fix that, and not the thermometer. And so what they are saying is that they want to fix the thermometer of prices when if prices are falling by targeting 2%. And what they mean by 2% is they mean the price levels in aggregate across the entire economy. So they measure how much prices have risen or fallen, and then the aggregate of it, right? So the 2% target they just took out of nowhere, basically. I think first was some bank in New Zealand that came up with this, and that was because the yearly supply of gold at that time was rising by 1 or 2% per year. So I think that's how they got this basically provisionary number, but of course they can wake up tomorrow and say, oh no, we need higher inflation. It should be roughly between 3 and 4%. They could do it in the same way as they are now saying that there should be 2% every year erosion of your purchasing power.
Yes.
Right?
Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. While inflation erodes savings accounts and market volatility threatens traditional investments, families need a timeless solution that stands the test of time. Introducing mindstgold.com, the revolutionary sound money wallet that makes gold ownership accessible to everyone. For as little as $1, you and your children can start building a portfolio of real physical gold with mindstgold.com. Instead of them saying inflation, they should actually be saying the erosion of the power of the money that's in your hand. And we hear that money is power. I guess knowledge is power. In this case, knowledge will save us, hopefully, from something. But Ivan, I want to ask, you suggest that inflation ruins society by design, which I would agree with you. Can you elaborate on how inflation functions? And maybe you've touched on this already, but as a hidden tax, and it actually disproportionately affects certain segments of the population.
Sure, and just before that, I would address what you said, and I just say what Javier Milei put it in very good words. He said, if printing money would bring prosperity or wealth, then printing diplomas would bring knowledge, right? So it's basically the same
perfect
thing. And so that's how so. I did say a bit about how this basically inflation, of course, it steals the purchasing power of the holder of the currency. So whoever has some savings in cash, and then the same currency units are multiplied in the economy, well, those multiplied currency units are now chasing the same amount of goods and services in the economy. And so they are now suddenly there, right? So if I have $10 and my neighbor suddenly gets $10, well, now he can, create it out of nothing. Now he can go and buy something that I could have bought for my $10, right?
Yeah,
so basically his units are now competing with mine, meaning that they stole my purchasing power, right? And so, of course, he didn't print them themselves. He had to get them from somewhere, right? Like normally their money is created through loans today, but loans either to the private sector from banks, or loans from banks to the governments, and then governments, they pay their debts. And so this is why deficits are inflationary, because, and by inflationary, I don't mean they result in prices rising necessarily. I mean inflationary, they result in higher money supply, which ultimately, once this money is deployed into economy, results either by prices rising or by not, or by them not falling as much as they would have otherwise.
Yeah.
Had there been no inflation of
That's
money.
right. Yeah.
And so, in that sense, to your question, who is hurt the most by this inflation is precisely the ones who get the new currency the last in the chain. Because when the new currency is created, the new paper money, the new digital money, whatever, it first enters the economy in some place. So, and there's this so-called Cantillon effect, right? So somebody gets those units first, and now they go out and then spend them. Yeah. So that's in the first circle. And then in the second circle, the one who received that money then spends it further, right? And so those people are spending it first. They're creating demand on products, while somebody else out there is just saving their cash, or they didn't get this new cash yet. Yeah. And so they're not buying, right? So in the meantime, these additional currency units are creating demand pressure on goods, and that creates, of course, that results ultimately in prices rising because there is more demand than otherwise would be there.
Yes. Yeah. Artificially inflating prices is really what is going on in one sense. Now, I wanted to ask, do you know much about the Frankfurt School?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of, I kind of feel like it's connected to Keynesian economics. So there's Herbert Marcuse is one of the fellows connected to it, Theodore Adorno and Erich Fromm, and they sought to understand the complexities of the 20th century, that liberal capitalist society, and then of course bringing these thoughts from Marxism to combat that liberal capitalist idea. So I wanted to ask you about Austrian economics and another fellow that we both admire, Murray Rothbard. You draw on some of his work in your book, which I highly recommend to people. How does the Austrian perspective on business cycles explain that boom and bust pattern that we inevitably experience in our society?
So this Austrian theory of business cycle, I think, is one of the most important lessons that somebody can learn about modern capitalism or modern banking system, or even inflation in general, probably. So one of the consequences of inflation is erosion of purchasing power, obviously.
Yeah, right.
That's if we have just some entity who is constantly like creating currency units, they're emanating from that entity, and so the money is getting debased, like kings in the old times, right? They would debase the currency, gather the same amount of currency, but then they would multiply it by mixing it with lesser metals.
Yes.
But what's happening in modern times for the past few centuries, since the banking got evolved in industrial era, is that we see entire economy suddenly booming, and then suddenly for no reason everything is stagnating or going down.
Yeah.
And so we have like suddenly job creation, everyone's spending and being happy for a few years, and then for a few years suddenly everything is going down. And we are talking here about when there are no wars or famine or some natural disasters or anything like that. So the logical question is, why is this happening? And so the Austrians are offering this theory, which Murray Rothbard basically also said that is the only theory that is coherent with their overall school of economics, that other schools don't have such theory that would be coherent with what those other schools are claiming in general.
Right.
And so, as I said, first consequence of inflation is the debasement of currency. But the second consequence is this creation of those cyclical cycles. So cycles in the whole economics or even markets. And so how does that happen? So the Austrians explain that basically, if they basically explain it that the price of money, the interest rates, are affected by the bank credit inflation. And so what they are saying is that if the banks would, if we had hard money like gold, and banks had full reserves of that, they would just be borrowing what is already saved. And so there would be no impact on the interest rates, because what are interest rates? Interest rates are basically saying what is the demand for money, right? Of course, what is the supply demand for money ratio? And so if you're loaning out something that already exists and only that, then you're not affecting the money supply. But in the modern system where banks can lend more than they have on books, and this can happen either in fiat currency, to be fair, or in the gold standard or any other commodity standards. So the key to understand is that the banks or other institutions, if they would lend something that would circulate as money, that they don't have on their deposits, actually, that they don't have on their reserves. So they're basically literally defrauding people, because if they're issuing more receipts than what they have can be claimed by those receipts, right? So if they lend out 10 of something, but they actually have 5. So, and now 6 people come back, then means 1 person will not get it back. And if all 10 come back, that means 5 will get it, but 5 will not.
That's right.
And so this can operate, this can last as long as there's no run on a bank.
Right.
But what happens is that once they do this, once they start doing this, issuing more receipts for money, issuing more currency units. So in today's simple terms, issuing more US dollars, Canadian dollars, euros, etc., than they have on reserves, that creates more money, basically, in circulation. That money always ends up on bank accounts again, in some other banks maybe, because it's spent or it's saved, but it's saved on bank accounts. Nobody takes 100,000 euros a loan and then puts it under the mattress. People spend it then on something, right? So, and that money then multiplies also, because once it ends on another bank's account, that bank can now lend it again 5-fold, 10-fold, basically. So it's endless stream of money creation, as long as the banks are confident that they will get the money back. So as long as they have confidence in economy, right? And so what this does is that, and this is then the key. So once we have this sudden increase in the money supply everywhere, right? This is spreading. We also have the at least artificial impression of the increase of savings, because now it looks like also there is more savings on the accounts.
Right.
And so what that does is that because there are more savings, that means there is banks have more money. It appears that there is more savings in the overall economy. Interest rates are then going down because there is less. The banks need to pay more to attract people to deposit money, right? So, but this is artificial. It's artificially created because there is actually no more real savings in the economy. There's no more real gold that is being stored in the bank's vaults. There is no more something real that is being stored. And so because of this, the price of money, the interest rate, it then gives a false signal to the entrepreneurs in the economy, meaning that businesses who are thinking about borrowing capital and then deploying it for productive means, they see, oh, the interest rates went down, I can get my loan cheaper. That means that the economic situation is good, means people are saving for the future, right? So there is enough savings to be consumed in the future. And so they then engage in investing into this productive capital equipment that takes longer time to produce basically the business. So they don't invest into, they don't spend their money on capital goods that actually consumers want,
Right.
because the consumers have not changed their preferences. It
Mm-hmm.
only appears as if they have. And so what
Right.
happens then is that interest rates go down. The producers, they start investing into building new buildings, storage houses, heavy machinery,
Right.
etc. That they will deploy in productive matters. But the consumer at the same time is not saving his paper money that he has, as it appears from the interest rates. What he does, the consumer, is actually continues buying the consumer goods immediately, not in the future, immediately. And so the consumer is now competing with those same materials and all these things that the entrepreneur needs to build all those machinery and other things for the future. And so because of this competition of that's happening at the same time, you have the demand now, immediate demand from both sides. And that, of course, then results in prices going up of those things that are in demand. And so then what happens is that the entrepreneur at certain point realizes, oh, the prices of all these goods that I need to build up this productive machinery, etc., are going up. Oh, it actually means I don't have enough money to spend on my project that I calculated initially.
Yes.
So his calculation is then wrong because of the false signals that were created by the artificial expansion of supply.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear a capital project in your community has gone over budget, here's the reason. This is it. Am I not? Is that not right, Ivan?
Yes, of course. This is not the only reason why some projects may get messed up, but definitely if we look at it across the entire economy, how is it that the question is that the Austrians pose there, right? Is how is it that suddenly all these trained entrepreneurs, all those people that have been, creating companies, businesses, they know how to deal with all these matters, and they obviously entrepreneurs, they constantly try to predict what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
How is it that majority of these people are suddenly all wrong about their predictions?
Exactly. So, Ivan, I want to ask, how can people get in touch with you?
So I don't have any special shows. I do have a LinkedIn account, Ivan Pavlovic. I live in Portugal, so if you type those few things in Google, you'll probably find me if you want to communicate with me. And so, don't hesitate to reach out.
And you have an X page as well, correct?
I do actually, IVANPVL, so people can add me there as well.
Yeah.
I don't post a lot, but I from time to time I can't hesitate to comment on certain things.
Oh, so. Good. Well, I was going to mention, I mentioned the connection between the Frankfurt School, who kind of perpetuates the ideals of Marxism, and I related to Keynesian economics, and I was corrected by Murray Rothbard. There's a quote here that says the one good thing about Karl Marx is that he's not a Keynesian economist. So
it can always be worse.
It can always be worse, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we go, you had mentioned something about the challenge for young people to buy homes, and that there's this, in marketing, it has been said that you always need an enemy for marketing your product. And the same thing that you were saying about in Ireland or other places of, there's so much immigration and they've taken the housing supply and now it's too expensive to find homes. We have the younger generation, people like yourself and younger, older, they're increasingly unable to afford homes, not just to rent, but to be able to purchase despite having professional jobs. How specifically has this modern monetary policy actually contributed to the housing affordability crisis? It's not necessarily can be blamed on the immigrants that are coming in, but something else perhaps?
So I think it was very visible during the 2008 crisis because it was very focused in that area, especially in US.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are very familiar with it. So what happened was that there was a policy after the 99-2000 crash there was again policy of cheap money,
Yes.
where the central banks lowered rates, and there was a stimulus for the loans to be given. There were, of course, other regulations that were that let's say when there is a cheap money, you can then get that money, but you still have to decide where to spend it.
Right.
And then, for example, in US, there were governmental regulations that redirected, let's say, that helped people to decide to go into real estate, right? So different kinds of subsidies and all these agencies and etc. Right? So the housing in general, I think, is what is very close to people, because everybody needs a place to live.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, like, let's say, it's a common sense that everybody needs to, buy their own home once they start working. So maybe not immediately, but within a couple of years. And so I think that then just everybody, of course, creates the demand by wanting the loans, and then if the banks are confident that they will be bailed out by the government in case of trouble, they will just be giving out those loans. And so those loans are then creating more money that can be then spent for that purpose, and that purpose is is real estate. But then real estate is just like any other asset. It starts being cheap or reasonably priced, then it shifts upwards, and it becomes a bit expensive. Yes. And then when I was, for example, in Dublin, but this is by no means the only city. I think it's similar in Zagreb, Luxembourg, and in Lisbon, where I am. I think if you compare how long, I was thinking to myself, how long would I have to work if I raised the loan to buy a small apartment in a city center? I would have to work, 30 or 40 years just to own a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom place. I mean, that sounds a bit silly to me. It's unrealistic. And the only reason this happens is because there is, this cheap money that is going out there. There are obviously some subjects in the economy that get this money easier than others, because some professional investors, like big funds, they can get loans easier than a common person, right? So it's also not a fair game that it's just me and my neighbor competing. I'm actually competing in some cities with big professional investment funds or other investors, right? And so, but what I was saying is that then real estate, like every asset, it eventually becomes very, very costly, very, very expensive, and then the whole game turns into the greater fool game.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that people who buy homes by paying a lot are fools. I'm just saying that with every asset, there is ultimately a game where you're buying with the hope that somebody else will later buy it from you with a higher price. And so this becomes then of course the cost, the higher the price is that you pay, the more dangerous the game becomes. And that's I think the only thing that people should have in mind.
Yeah, it sounds like stock trading as well, or crypto trading. I wanted to ask.
It's the human nature in everything. It's if we are incentivized, then that's another effect of inflation. If we are disincentivized from saving, if we are disincentivized from investing, because both saving and prudent investing is bringing very low profits because of all this debt and manipulation. And if we see people getting rich on some crazy speculations or something, then we may just as well give it a go and say, oh, you know what? If I invest $1,000 into something and after 5 years I have 2,000, I mean, that's kind of worthless to me, because all the prices will rise much more than I have made. But if I put $1,000 and maybe I get $20,000 from it and I'm rich, well, then it's much better for me. So I may as well try and gamble it. Otherwise, I'm losing anyway, right? So what do I really have to lose? Not that much. So this is what inflation does. It destroys also society from within, because it disincentivizes long-term growth and prudent saving and investing, which brings prosperity to society, which brings better living standard to future generations, and in fact it just encourages a completely wrong behaviors.
Right. So I want to ask you, well, actually, I have two more questions for you. Many people have their retirement savings in pension funds that can often invest in bonds or other traditional assets. Why do you believe that these pensions may become worthless? And what timeline do you foresee for this scenario?
I think that so first we have to keep in mind what pensions are, because modern pension systems are basically new thing, the kind of 100 years old or so, where the government again decided that people should not be saving themselves and decide
Yep.
where to put their money for their retirement. The government said, we will take care of you. And so what they created is basically that the system, a Ponzi scheme, where the every young generation needs to service the old generation,
Right.
which works until it doesn't,
Yes.
based on demographics and of course the overall economy of the nation. And so what that was before, when the average living age was 60 years old. People lived until they were maybe 60, 65, and then they died. Today people live much longer, but they don't necessarily want to work much
Yes.
longer
Right.
as well, right? And so what that happens is then, of course, younger generations need to serve older ones longer. But then at the same time, we have the trend where people have less children. Young people have less children, and so basically the whole system is crumbling and is being serviced by general taxation. It's not really being
Right.
serviced the way it's imagined to function. It's being serviced by general taxes and these hidden taxes of inflation. And so when the pension funds or the banks buy government bonds, they may do so voluntarily in the free market, but unfortunately they may also be coerced into buying these assets if the governments decide
Yes.
to enact regulations and force them to buy or to own a certain percentage of their overall assets into government bonds. This can
Right.
also happen. And so then what this means is that the government gives itself more time to survive, whoever is in power, by giving out those paper certificates, and in exchange getting the investments, the savings from people from those pension funds.
Right.
And so if there is simply if you have big problems in economy, if you have maybe a banking crisis or something like this, what will happen is that prices of assets will be going down, and the governments who are highly indebted will not like it, because then how will they get the taxes? That their tax receipts will go down to pay for the debts they have if the prices are going down. So they will have to basically print a lot of currency, meaning again borrowing a lot in terms of paper money, fake fiat money. And so what that will do then to those who own government debt is that suddenly those holders of debt will be getting currency that is worth less and less because of all of that printing. And so that means that pensioners or other people who are on fixed income, they will be getting, in real terms, not in nominal terms, but in real terms, they will be getting less, and so they will be greatly impoverished if there is such a scenario.
Yes. Now, one other question then I want to ask you is there a way to know who actually owns the central banks?
I have not heard. I think so. First of all, central banks are created differently in different jurisdictions.
Okay.
So I have not. I've listened to experts also on these topics, but I think that I have never heard for sure who really owns, who is behind
Gotcha.
the money that is there, because in some countries it is kind of private public partnership where
Okay.
there are private interests behind the central bank, so private holders of their equity,
Right.
who are somewhere probably behind many structures, who
Yes.
get the money. And in others, these are public entities, so there is no someone who is private subject who gets the money, but rather
Gotcha.
just the government kind of benefits together with the banking sector overall from
Right.
the schemes they can pull together through the mechanisms that the central bank can provide.
Yes. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What a conversation. Great topic. Something I always enjoy discussing. And of course, I'd like to remind our listeners that you too can pick up a copy of Ivan's book, Making Money on the Money Printer. Put it up there for you to see. And it's available on Amazon. So we'll include a direct link in our show notes for that link so that you can pick up a copy of that for yourself. And if you've been wondering why everything keeps getting more expensive and real wealth seems harder and harder to build, well, getting this book, it's your chance to understand those mechanisms behind these challenges, and hopefully you can take some practical steps to protect your financial future. Ivan, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for sharing your insights.
It was a pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Yes, great conversation. And of course, viewers, thank you for being here. We appreciate you joining this conversation. I do want to remind you, Henry Hazlitt said, we cannot pay labor more than it produces. And when you think in terms of all those government employees that don't really produce any money, but yet they get paid. So we appreciate you joining in on this conversation. If you haven't already, please help us help us to grow this channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing with your friends and others who you know need to hear this information. And of course, feel free to leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player for 5 a.m. podcast. And of course, I want to mention thanks to myinstantgold.com, where you can buy gold for as little as $10 at a time. A great way to save some money and store some value in gold. And thank you so much to those that have gone over to buymeacoffee.com/5am podcast. We do appreciate your support. So until next time, may you seize your days. May you enjoy each sunrise and sunset and all the adventures in between. I'm Michael Klassen. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. While inflation erodes savings accounts and market volatility threatens traditional investments, families need a timeless solution that stands the test of time. Introducing myinstantgold.com, the revolutionary sound money wallet that makes gold ownership accessible to everyone. For as little as $1, you and your children can start building a portfolio of real physical gold with myinstantgold.com.